You can hang them from a tree, but they can never be members of the oldest Southern fraternity, according to that fraternity's own song. Today, the University of Oklahoma expelled 2 students who it said played leadership roles in that video. University President David Boren said those students, quote, created a hostile environment for others. Tonight, we now have statements from one of the expelled students and from the parents of another. 19-year-old Parker Rice issued this statement in Dallas tonight, saying, I am deeply sorry for what I did Saturday night. I know everyone wants to know why or how this happened. I admit it likely was fueled by alcohol consumed at the house before the bus trip, but that's not an excuse. Yes, the song was taught to us, but that too doesn't work as an explanation. His statement then never does explain why we see him here leading the song in this video. There'll never be a SAE. There'll never be a SAE. Parker Rice's statement continued, I clearly dismissed an important value I learned at my beloved high school, Dallas Jesuit. I'm sure Dallas Jesuit was happy to be included in this statement. We were taught to be men for others. I failed in that regard, and in those moments, I also completely ignored the core values and ethics I learned from my parents and others. The parents of 20-year-old Levi Pettit issued a statement tonight also in Dallas, saying, as parents of Levi, we love him and care for him deeply. He made a horrible mistake and will live with the consequences forever. However, we also know the depth of our son's character. He is a good boy. But what we saw in those videos is disgusting. While it may be difficult for those who only know Levi from the video to understand, we know his heart, and he is not a racist. Joining me now, Anthony Douglas, the president of the Oklahoma chapter of the NAACP. Mr. Douglas, how do you expect those statements to be received in Oklahoma tonight?
Well, I think if those statements are sincere, I think the state of Oklahoma, as well as the student at OU, can accept those statements as they are sincerely being made. And I truly believe from my heart that those students truly believe that their statement that they're giving and their parents support them, that they are forgiving, they are sorry for the statements they made.
And Parker Rice also said in his statement, I am seeking guidance on how I can learn from this and make sure it never happens again. What guidance would you give him for that?
Actually, one of the guidance that I would give them, and to all the students involved, that I would like to see them come out in the community and volunteer in the African-American community. Get to know the people in the African-American community. As the NAACP, and we have a chapter on campus to work with the NAACP. And I think this was going to be an alternative to show of their true meaning of forgiveness, that they go out in the community and work with us.
Christina Greer, as a professor, you have contact with college students all the time. You know, when I look at the parent statement saying we know what's in his heart, he's not a racist, it just reads to me as another pair of American parents who don't know their child.
Right, and I think it's, you know, obviously parents' jobs are to love their children. We'll give them that. Mm-hmm. But let's also be very clear. Your sons did this, and they said these things, and they will have to face the consequences. But being a professor in a university and speaking to students of all different backgrounds, we know that these things happen, and we know that they happen across colleges, across the country. In the African-American community, in the Latino and Asian communities, in the LGBT community. These are these constant assaults that students are under, right? And many colleges just don't do enough of the work. It's heavy lifting to do social justice work. It's really heavy lifting to do anti-racist work. And I think there's a lot of lip service paid to it. I think there are a lot of apologies that are made after the fact and commitments by universities to do something.
Professor, I just wanted to interject as you speak, and I want you to continue this, but what we're seeing is new video tonight of protests at the University of Oklahoma over this issue. Go ahead, Professor, sorry.
So, I mean, yes, their apologies can be accepted by whomever wants to accept the apology, but let's be very clear that these words carry meaning, right? For not just the students on the campus who are African American, but for the students who consider themselves allies, right? It's not just about the two boys who led the chant. It's about all the other members on the bus that sang along, right? If they need to be held accountable as well. Because if you consider yourself an ally, you don't condone that behavior, whether alcohol is consumed or not. But let's also be clear, these people are under 21. That's just a side note. So for me, as someone who's dedicated her life to helping to shape the minds of young Americans, young college students, this is really problematic that they don't understand not just the N-word, right, which so many college students throw around across the country, but the use of hanging from a tree. And we know that this particular fraternity has been kicked off of campuses across the country. They actually had a black pledgee die at Cornell a few years ago, which had them kicked off campus, right? And so you have to sort of look at that in a much larger narrative with the SAE community. But hanging from a tree has a historical narrative in this country. And when so many colleges are really quick to want to be post-racial, which most people of color know that it absolutely does not exist. It can't exist because racism exists, and you can't have racism without racists. So just because you don't want your son to be hurt because they're suffering the repercussions of their actions, let's be clear. There's something in his foundation that is wrong. There's something in the moral fiber that is wrong. There's something in the moral fiber of this country that is wrong. Right? We can't separate the conversation from 2 segments ago about the behavior of senators toward our black chief of staff from this type of behavior, right? I mean, they're not completely opposite. Some people may see them as just unrelated events, the same way many people see unrelated events between Eric Garner and Tamir Rice and Mike Brown and Tony Richardson, right? These are things where if we're going to put together a narrative, we have to put together a holistic narrative of race and racism in this country. David
Axelrod, I don't know if you've spoken to the president since this story has come out, but you've been with the president when we've seen different racial incidents occur in America. What do you imagine his reaction to this is, and what do you suppose he's telling his daughters about it tonight?
Well, look, it's deeply obvious, deeply offensive, deeply troubling, sickening on the one hand. On the other hand, you know, I just want to, without disputing anything that the professor said, let's also recognize what just happened. This appeared on social media, and the entire country responded with revulsion to it. The president of the University of Oklahoma took action on it. You have protests, as you mentioned, on the campus to the behavior of these young men, the repulsive behavior of these young men. Let's take some solace in that. We have a lot of challenges in our country, and we have since the beginning of the Republic. But as the president said in Selma on the weekend, we've made progress, and the fact that the country has made this practice unacceptable when exposed is an encouraging development.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break right there. Anthony Douglas, thank you very much for joining us from Oklahoma tonight.